Hi everyone. If you were obedient, life would be easier. That's what she said to me with that condescending smile while folding laundry as if she was sharing profound wisdom. I watched her then, arranging my clothes into perfect piles, deciding where everything belonged, just like she decided everything else in our lives. I didn't respond immediately. After 5 years of marriage, I'd learned that immediate reactions led to longer arguments, so I nodded and continued washing dishes. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the casual way she compared me to a disobedient child, or perhaps it was the culmination of thousands of similar moments. "I'm your husband, not your son," I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. She stopped folding, her hands freezing mid-motion. "Excuse me? You speak to me like I'm someone you need to train, not someone you love." The laugh that followed cut deeper than any insult could have. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just trying to help you become a better person. Why are you always so sensitive?" I turned back to the dishes, but my mind was racing. Every decision questioned, every preference mocked, every achievement minimized. I'd been slowly disappearing, replaced by a version of myself that caused the least conflict. "My mother always said men need guidance," she continued, approaching me from behind. "She managed my father perfectly until the day he died. They never fought because he understood his role." Something snapped inside me, not in an explosive way, but like a rope that had been pulling tighter for years, finally giving way. The relief was immediate and terrifying. "I'm not your father," I whispered. "What was that?" Her tone sharpened. I turned to face her. "I'm not your father, and you're turning into your mother." Her expression transformed instantly. I'd never seen such pure rage before. "How dare you? After everything I've done for you, I've sacrificed my dreams to build this life." But I was already somewhere else mentally, somewhere beyond the reach of her familiar tactics. For the first time in years, I was thinking clearly. "We need to talk about our relationship," I said. "This isn't healthy. There's nothing to discuss. You're being ungrateful and childish," she snapped, storming out of the kitchen. That night, I lay awake beside her sleeping form, replaying years of subtle control and manipulation. The separate bank accounts, she insisted, was more organized. The friendships that gradually faded because she found flaws in everyone. The career opportunity one declined because she said it would destabilize our future. I'd been so focused on avoiding conflict that I'd allowed myself to become a passenger in my own life. But her comparing me to her father revealed everything. I wasn't a partner to her. I was a project, someone to mold and control. Dawn was breaking when I made my decision. If obedience would make life easier, then I would make my life easier my own way. Not by submitting, but by walking away. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it would be mine to choose. The days following our kitchen confrontation were eerily normal on the surface. We moved around each other and practiced choreography, but the undercurrent had changed. I started noticing patterns I'd been blind to for years. She monitored my phone casually, glancing at notifications while passing by. "Just curious who's texting you so late," she'd say with a smile that never reached her eyes. My passwords were our passwords because couples shouldn't have secrets. Even my clothing choices were subject to her approval under the guise of helpful suggestions. I tried one last attempt at honest communication over dinner. "I feel like I've lost myself in this marriage," I said carefully. "We need to find a balance where both our needs matter." Her fork paused midway to her mouth. "Is this still about what I said? You're really dragging this out?" She sighed dramatically. "Fine. I apologize if my wording hurt your feelings, but you know I only want what's best for us. For us or for you." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her expression hardened. "If you can't tell the difference, that's concerning. Everything I do is for our future. Someone has to think long-term." The conversation devolved from there into familiar territory. My shortcomings, her sacrifices, how her parents' marriage worked because her father understood compromise. By the end, somehow I was apologizing for being ungrateful. The next day, I scheduled a therapy appointment during my lunch break. I told no one. "What you're describing sounds like emotional control," the therapist said after I'd outlined some of our dynamics. Healthy relationships involve mutual respect and autonomy. But she's not abusive, I protested weakly. She never yells or threatens me. Control doesn't always look like anger, she replied gently. Sometimes it's presented as love, as protection, as knowing what's best. I left that office with a recommended reading list and a strange mix of validation and grief. I devoured books on emotional manipulation and codependency in secret, hiding them in my gym locker. Each page was like holding up a mirror to my marriage. That weekend, while she visited her mother, I went through our financial documents, creating spreadsheets of assets and expenses. I researched apartments in a nearby city and calculated what I could afford alone. These concrete steps felt both terrifying and exhilarating. When she returned, she brought her mother's criticism with her. Mom thinks you've been distant lately. She says I need to pay more attention to your moods before they become a problem. The statement was so perfectly aligned with what I'd been reading about triangulation that I almost laughed. Instead I said, I'd prefer if you didn't discuss our marriage with your mother. We're just concerned about you, she said with practiced sincerity. Maybe you should talk to someone. You haven't been yourself lately. The irony of her suggestion after my secret therapy appointment wasn't lost on me, but her concern wasn't for my well-being. It was for the disruption in my compliance. That night, as she slept, I made my final decision. The controlled life she promised would be easier had become a prison. I would rather face uncertainty alone than certainty without agency. My escape plan would take time, but for the first time in years I had something that was entirely mine. Hope. Planning my exit required precision and patience. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank, redirecting a portion of each paycheck there. Small enough not to raise immediate concerns, but sufficient to build an emergency fund. I scanned important documents while she was out with friends and stored them securely online. Each small step was a quiet declaration of independence. What surprised me most during this phase was how my perspective shifted. I began standing straighter, speaking more confidently at work. A colleague even commented on the change. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. You seem more present. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was becoming more myself as I planned to leave. 3 weeks into my preparations, she noticed the change too. You've been distracted lately, she observed over breakfast. Eyes narrowed slightly. Is there something going on at work you're not telling me about? Just focused on a big project, I replied, maintaining eye contact despite the guilt bubbling beneath the surface. I hated the deception, but years of experience had taught me that transparency would only trigger manipulation tactics. Well, I hope it's worth it. Your attitude at home has been disappointing, she said, stirring her coffee methodically. Maybe we should plan a weekend away, reconnect a bit. My mother offered us their lake house. The suggestion, framed as generosity, but designed to isolate us where she could regain control, confirmed I was making the right decision. Let me check my schedule, I answered non-committally. That evening, I signed a 6-month lease on a modest apartment 20 minutes away. The property manager had it ready immediately, a stroke of luck I hadn't counted on. I paid the deposit from my secret account and received the keys with trembling hands. Standing alone in that empty apartment, I experienced a dizzying mix of terror and exhilaration. The bare walls and uncurtained windows represented both vulnerability and possibility. I had 2 days to furnish it minimally before my planned departure. When I returned home, she was waiting with a glass of wine and that particular smile that once made my heart race, but now made my stomach clench. I was thinking about what you said a while back, about losing yourself, she began, voice honeyed with false understanding. Maybe you're right, we should work on that together. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Could we fix this? I even ordered that book your colleague recommended about marriage communication. She continued, gesturing to a package on the counter. My blood ran cold. I hadn't mentioned any book. She'd been checking my browsing history or emails again. That's thoughtful, I managed, taking a sip of the wine she'd poured me. I'm actually pretty tired tonight. Mind if we talk more tomorrow? Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, whatever you need. I lay awake that night, listening to her breathe beside me, mentally cataloging what I'd take and what I'd leave behind. Possessions suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the weight of reclaiming my autonomy. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited until she left for her yoga class. Then I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, clothes, toiletries, important mementos, my grandfather's watch she always hated. The efficiency with which I moved through our home felt almost mechanical, as if I were watching someone else dismantle their life. I left a letter on the kitchen counter explaining my decision, emphasizing that this wasn't impulsive, but the result of years of subtle control. I included contact information from my lawyer, another secret preparation, and the name of the mediator I'd researched. Driving away from our house that day, I finally understood what freedom truly meant. Not selfishness or irresponsibility, as she'd always implied, but the sacred right to author my own story, however imperfect it might be. The first night in my new apartment was deafeningly quiet. I sat on my hastily purchased futon, surrounded by boxes and bare necessities, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. My phone buzzed relentlessly, first with confused texts, then angry ones, followed by tearful voicemails that twisted my insides with familiar guilt. Please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. How could you leave like this after everything we've built? If you come home now, we can pretend this never happened. My mother was right about you all along. I turned off my phone that night and slept better than I had in years. The storm truly hit the next day. She found my workplace, creating a scene in the lobby that had security escorting her out. She contacted mutual friends with a carefully crafted narrative. I was having a breakdown, possibly an affair. Definitely needed intervention. Several called me with concerns, and I lost count of how many times I explained my side in measured tones, careful not to vilify her, despite the growing temptation. Some friends chose sides immediately, which was illuminating. Those who'd seen glimpses of the dynamic over years offered support without judgment. Others, who only knew the charming public version of our relationship, expressed disappointment in me. The social fallout was painful but clarifying, like lancing a wound to release infection. Her tactics evolved with frightening precision. When anger didn't work, she pivoted to concern. I'm worried about your mental health. When concern failed, she tried nostalgia. Remember our first apartment? How happy we were. When nostalgia didn't move me, she employed mutual connections to apply pressure. Through it all, I maintained boundaries with a firmness that surprised even me. My therapist called it finding your voice, but it felt more like remembering something long forgotten. 3 weeks after leaving, I returned to our house while she was at work to collect more belongings. Her mother was waiting for me instead. She's lost weight, you know? She said accusingly from the kitchen doorway as I packed books into a box. Barely sleeping? Is that what you wanted? I paused, recognizing the manipulation tactic for what it was. I wanted a healthy relationship where both people have agency, I replied calmly. That wasn't possible here. Relationships require sacrifice, she countered, crossing her arms. My husband understood that. Looking at her, the blueprint for what my wife was becoming, I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. I'm sorry he did, I said simply, and continued packing. The logistics of separation were messy, but navigable. Dividing finances, notifying creditors, changing addresses. Each task was a thread severing me from my old life. I approached them methodically, finding strange satisfaction in reclaiming my administrative independence. Evenings were hardest. After years of constant companionship, solitude felt both liberating and disorienting. I'd catch myself listening for another person's movements, preparing to adjust my own behavior accordingly. That hypervigilance took months to unlearn. I filled those quiet hours deliberately, reconnecting with old hobbies, calling estranged friends, even taking an evening class in photography. I'd always been interested in, but she dismissed as impractical. Each small choice made exclusively for myself felt revolutionary. 60 days after leaving, legal papers were filed. 90 days after, we sat across from each other in mediation, her eyes boring into me with calculated vulnerability that once would have made me crumble. Instead, I maintained polite detachment, focusing on equitable resolution rather than emotional reconciliation. "You'll regret this," she said softly as we left the final session. "No one will ever know you like I do." For the first time, that thought brought comfort rather than fear. The person she knew, the diminished, compliant version of me, was fading away, and I had no intention of inviting anyone else to know me so incompletely again. 1 year after walking away, I barely recognized the man I was. My apartment has become a home filled with books she would have deemed unnecessary, art that speaks to me rather than matches furniture, and a peace that no amount of external validation could provide. The silence that once felt threatening now feels sacred. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago with surprisingly little drama. Her final power play, refusing to sign unless I gave her the family heirlooms my grandmother left me, failed when my lawyer pointed out they were never marital property. She signed the papers with a theatrical sigh that once would have launched me into hours of apologetic backpedaling. I've learned to recognize the subtle forms of control I once mistook for care. The friend out who gets sullen when I don't take their advice. The date who tests boundaries with small impositions, watching my reaction. The colleague who uses guilt to secure favors. These dynamics now trigger immediate caution rather than reflexive compliance. My career has flourished in unexpected ways without someone constantly questioning my ambitions or reminding me of potential failures. I took risks that paid off. The promotion I accepted last month would have been impossible in my previous life. It requires occasional travel she would have sabotaged with manufactured emergencies. Dating again has been both terrifying and illuminating. I'm transparent about my past, using it as a filter of sorts. Some potential partners see my boundaries as challenges to overcome. They don't get second dates. Others respect them implicitly, understanding that healthy love makes room for individuality. I'm in no rush to commit, but I'm no longer afraid of connection either. The most profound change has been internal. I now recognize my own value separate from others' assessment of it. Decision-making, once paralyzed by anticipatory anxiety about her reaction, has become straightforward. What do I want? What serves my well-being? These questions guide me without the burden of shame they once carried. Yesterday, I encountered her unexpectedly at a mutual friend's gathering. She's dating someone new, a quiet man who watched her constantly for cues on how to behave. Our eyes met briefly across the room, and I saw a flicker of the old manipulative warmth, an invitation to engage in familiar patterns. "We should catch up sometime," she suggested when social convention forced our interaction. "I'm in a much better place now. We could talk about what went wrong." "I'm glad you're doing well," I responded sincerely, "but I think we both know what happened between us, and revisiting it wouldn't serve either of us." Her smile tightened as she realized the old hooks no longer caught. "You've changed," she observed, voice sharp with accusation. Yes, I agreed simply. That was the point. Walking home afterward, I reflected on her parting words, the same ones that had once catalyzed my departure. "If you were obedient, life would be easier." She was right in her way. Obedience does make some things easier. Decisions are made for you. Responsibility is diminished. The path is clear if narrow. But the ease she offered came at the cost of my identity, my agency, my very self. The difficulty I chose instead, the uncertainty, the solitude, the challenges of full autonomy, has brought a deeper ease that compliance never could. The profound relief of living authentically. My life now isn't perfect. Some days are lonely. Some decisions lead to mistakes I must own completely. But even on the hardest days, I wake up as myself, answering to my own conscience rather than another's control. And that freedom, however demanding, is the easiest thing I've ever known. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.